I've been getting a ton of messages from marketing agencies and other companies out there who are running ads and getting leads for their business, but they're getting a really small shop rate. So they've been asking me nonstop, Hayden, how do you train your team on a way to handle objections and actually get a minimum of 70% of your leads show up to the appointments? And to be honest, it's quite easy when you actually understand what they mean by objections when these prospects are bringing them up to you over the phone, and also understanding that nothing is ever going to happen if you just stay on the surface level, right? You got to dig a little bit deeper down below the surface level and actually understand the cause, root, and the problems to get the person motivated and create that urgency to show up to that appointment. So what I've done is I put together some training, like a full document that I actually take my team through and we onboard them. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump into my computer and we'll go over that guide together.
All right, now we're inside of my computer. What I'm going to take you guys through is actually one of the training documents that we take my appointment setters through at Speed to Lead before they actually start doing appointment setting on behalf of our clients. And essentially what this document is doing is explain to you guys why people, especially these marketing agencies and these other companies who don't have trained appointment setters, are struggling to get people to show up to appointments and actually increase their booking rates overall. So the whole point of this document is to give you guys an understanding that these leads actually need clarity, which is the thing that they're lacking to, is why they're not showing up to the appointment or why they're not wanting to book out in the first place. So the whole objective of this document here is to give you guys a framework that solves a problem when prospects are interested but unsure what to do next. Because that's what you've got to remember, right? Is if a prospect's clicked on your ad and given you their details, there is a level of interest there. It's just they're not too sure what to do with that interest, or they're not even aware with what options they have available. So it's your job as an appointment setter to explore that a little bit more, to actually turn the person from interested to certain that this is the next possible step for them, right? So the goal is to handle the send me an email objection, which is by far the most common objection that people will give you over the phone. Identify hidden prospect thoughts and go deeper than the actual surface level that I was explaining before. Build certainty without pressure, because it's so important to build certainty in a person without coming across salesy, which is everything that we teach inside Speed to Lead, is how to become basically an appointment setter without coming across like you're a telemarketer or an appointment setter, right? And then we need to be able to position the appointment as the obvious next step. Too many people are booking their leads into a strategy session or some sort of wealth mapping session or whatever it is, right? It's not what you're booking people in for. You got to be booking in people for exactly what they're after, which is what this document shows you how to do, right? So the context, decisions will generally feel complex for prospects when they reach out to you. Trust is the primary currency. They're not going to do anything with anybody that they don't actually trust. And hesitation will generally come from confusion, not skepticism. So generally speaking, the reason to is why people aren't able to get more people booked in is because they're still unsure with what they're actually booking themselves in for, or they don't get the person show up because they still weren't clear on the next steps, or they just weren't certain this was actually something worth them showing up for. So if we want to go over the most common objection being the truth about sending me an email, right? This is basically when a prospect's saying, hey, I just want an email, can you send it to me? But what we got to remember is, right, they're never actually asking for more information. What they're signaling to you is that they're confused about what the next step is. They're uncertain about how you could actually help them in their current situation, or have some doubt in amongst around the solution that you guys are trying to provide. So if you're currently an appointment setter and you're agreeing to send them an email, you're actually allowing that person to make worse decisions, right? Because you're essentially telling them that it's okay just to go get more information without addressing the underlying problems, right? So what you got to understand is when people are asking you for an email, it's just that they're either confused about what the next step is, they're uncertain about how you actually help them or what you actually do, and they have doubt as if whether this will actually work for them. So that's why you got to dig a little bit deeper and find out their true meaning and why they actually want to solve the problem that they reached out to you for in the first place, right? So people don't need more information. They just need clarity. We need to give them clarity on what their problem is. We need to give them clarity on what solutions they have available, right? We are not the salespeople, so we're not going to be giving them everything, but we've got to give them clarity and know that this is common, that the problem that they're experiencing, and we are the right people to go out there and solve it, right? It's not your job as an appointment setter to sell them the idea of working with you. It's to have them get sold on the idea of potentially working with you by exploring the next steps, right? So what you've also got to take into account is most prospects will be keen but confused, right? So most prospects aren't resistant to booking in or doing the next step. They are outcome focused but afraid of making the wrong decision, right? Which is very common when you're talking to leads over the phone, especially the ones that are coming from paid ads online, right? So why this matters is trying to sell harder is actually going to create resistance. So if you're trying to sell your company, your service, your product, or whoever you're calling on behalf, right, that is the wrong way to go about it, right? What you've got to be doing as an appointment setter is sell the problem, not the solution, right? So if a prospect hasn't clearly felt what the problem is costing them, they will hesitate. So when somebody reaches out to you to solve a problem or to get closer to whatever their goals are, you've got to explore their pain, right? You've got to explore their pain. What does it cost them from waiting so long to actually do something about it today? What is the cost if they keep waiting to do something about it and kick it aside for the next 2 to 3 years? What is that actually costing them, right? You've got to sit there and you've got to explore it on a deeper level. So somebody's reaching out to you, for example, because they want to go get a roof repaired or want to get a quote for a roof repair. Why is that? Are they trying to get in early before something bad happens? Were they looking at getting a roof repair last year, but got hit by a storm and had some water come through? So now they're wanting to get onto it now before the next storm comes through. You've got to understand the situation to go and build that urgency, because people won't change if there's no urgency and no reason to do so, right? So you've got to focus on the problem, sell the problem to them, not the solution, right? So you've got to position the pain first. What is their pain, right? Why does staying the same, well, what does staying the same cost them? What does delaying this actually do to them, right? And you need to position your solution as the vehicle, right? But the vehicle is always the second thing. You're always selling on the pain and then providing the vehicle. So the vehicle is essentially your offer, right? It's merely the vehicle to solve their pain. It's not the headline. What I mean by that is too many people, even my setters inside the property sector, are too busy trying to sit there and sell the person the idea of property investing, right? But at the end of the day, the person's not going to go buy a property. They're going to go buy a property because it's going to get them to retirement. It's going to slash their taxes. So we've got to figure out what's actually motivating them to do this, and then using our product or service as the vehicle to actually go and get them there, right? And languages, it's very important to have an understanding of the words that you're using over the call, because if you use the wrong words, you can plant doubt, you can plant fear, you can cause more resistance, you can make the person not actually want to do anything moving forward, right? So the language that you want to avoid is it might be hard if, right? Because it might be hard. What does that plant into the person's brain? So you say, well, it might be hard to squeeze you in this week. You're planting fear into that person's mind that you mightn't actually be able to help them, right? Or it might be hard to, be able to help you without at least getting you to the next step, right? That's going to plant doubt in that person's fear, in that person's mind. It's your job as the appointment setter to make them feel certain in the company that you're representing as the best possible potential solution for them moving forward. So you can't have them have any doubt, any fear, or anything along the lines of that if you're trying to get a high volume of appointments that are qualified and a high show up rate, right? Another thing here is you might not qualify. I've heard one of my setters say that. And what does that actually do to the person's psychology, right? If you say you might not qualify, they go, oh, shit, maybe I won't. Because they put you on this pedestal, right? When you're on the phone to them, your opinion and your words that you decide to use matters so much. So you don't want to be using anything that makes them feel like that this couldn't potentially work for them. So instead, you need to reframe the stuff as necessary. So what I mean by that is position requirements as necessary for strong outcomes, right? Part of working with serious people. So the part of working with serious people is that we first get to understand A, B, and C. And the great thing about that is after that, we get to go help you do X, Y, and Z, right? So that's the types of words that you need to be using, right? The reason results are consistent. So the reason why the results are consistent for our clients is because of A, B, and C. That there with those words that you're using gives the prospect so much more confidence in the actual company that you're calling on behalf, because certainty attracts commitment, right? And what you want to be doing is planting seeds in the prospect's mind to have them certain that you are the person to help them solve this problem that they're reaching out to you for, right? You want to build that certainty to attract commitment. Otherwise, if they are uncertain, it's going to kill your show up and kill your booking rates, which is probably the problem that you're facing if you're watching this video today. Number 6, right, is handling conflicted goals. So many prospects want two things that don't align, meaning, oh, I want to be comfy now and not do much work, but then later down the track, I don't want to have this problem, right? That conflicts. At the end of the day, something's got to give. You got to do something about it now or pay the price ultimately later down the track. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. So what your job is not to argue with the prospect over the way that they're thinking, right? Don't convince them, but just lay both options clearly, right? So what's more important to you, Mr. Prospect, staying the way you are today or making sure 12 months down the track your roof doesn't fall in on your head while you're sleeping, right? So they're the two options that you have to present to the people. Obviously, make it personalized for the industry that you're working in. If you work in different industries, comment them down below and we can workshop them together. That's essentially what you want to do because it's your job to bring them to clarity. If they're still tossing up two different ideas by the time they get off the phone with you, they're not 100% certain, which we all know uncertainty is going to kill the show up rate for the appointments that you're booking in. So you got to make sure that they're walking away with a clear understanding of what their problem is, what could be some potential solutions, and what the next steps are leading onto that call, which is generally getting their questions answered, taking them through a presentation, showing them the strategies that we use and the results that we got for other clients, right? You got to make it so crystal clear to what they're walking into. You won't go to a doctor's appointment if you don't know what the doctor's going to do to you, right? We all know what the doctor's going to do, especially if you go to the dentist, right? If you go to the dentist, everybody knows that when you go there, you just get a checkup. They're going to check your mouth. They're going to see about how much bone you've got, the health of your gums, and then if there's any thing that needs to improve, they're going to present you a couple of treatment options, right? Everybody knows what those appointments are. So you need to make it crystal clear when you're on the phone with these prospects about what the next steps are, right? Another one here that we like to go over for my team is qualifying without pressure, right? Because what can happen is, especially if you need to qualify and get financial details of prospects over the phone, which is really, really common, it can get quite sensitive asking for that type of information, which can come across real salesy, which is not what you want to do, especially if you're trying to get the sale, right? You don't want to come across salesy. So it's qualifying people without pressure, right? So qualification should feel like you're exploring their options with them, not an interrogation, not question by question by question just to see if it works. You need to be exploring it together in a way where it feels like it's almost like a team effort, right? That you're asking them questions and great news because you bought your house 5 years ago. There could be a huge amount of options available to yourself. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how much have you got remaining on that property? Right? So it's asking these types of questions, not in a, hey, so when did you buy it? What's it worth? Can you tell me this? Can you tell me that? That's going to kill the conversation. And even if you get the person booked in, the chances of them showing up would be very, very slim. So what you need to be doing is directing the conversation, not aiming for perfection, right? You don't want to have perfect conversations with a prospect. You need to be direct and you need to control the conversation. You need to build momentum in that, right? Little quick wins. Great news. I mean, really good stuff going out there and buying your first property. I speak to a ton of people who haven't even been able to go and get their first, right? Build momentums of quick wins, right? Build momentum of shit that they've already done. Make their past actions seem good and positive so they feel like their next future actions are going to be good and positive, right? Intent, not numbers alone. So we got to make sure that there's a massive amount of intent there with qualification, not just that the numbers line up, right? Not just that the person can afford the property or can afford that the roof's getting done. We got to understand their level of intent. So by the sounds of it, Hayden, I mean, like looking on paper, everything stacks up. You definitely seem like you can be a killer case study for us. But if you don't mind me asking me, why is it important to you to do something about this today? Is understanding their level of intent. Because if you don't understand their level of intent, or you don't get the prospect to say it out loud, they probably don't know it because they're not going to get that clarity and they're not going to show up to those appointments, right? And then what you need to do from there is reframe the appointment. So if prospects are resisting bookings, they think they're being sold to. So reposition the appointment, right? So reposition the appointment as a clarity session where they're going to get all of their questions answered. Bring your notepad, bring your pen, write down your questions because you're going to absolutely love asking the person's name on the call that you're going to be having that conversation with. And you want to have them realize it's going to be a personalized convo, not just a generic sales call, right? Well, based off all the information you've given to me today, Hayden, I definitely think you're best suited to speak to blah, blah, blah. That makes it feel like personalized. And the reason to is why I think you're best suited to blah, blah, blah is because of A, B, and C reasons that we discussed today, right? Now that seems like a much more personalized call for that exact same person, right? And the key line is this is where confusion gets cleared up. So if you're confused about which options you have, which areas you should buy in, or what stuff you need to be doing to get X, Y, and Z, then this is what this exact session is for. It's dedicated to you. Bring your questions, bring your pen, bring your partner. And all I want from you from the session is get an understanding of what your real options are. And then there'll be two options. Option one, you can use all that information that we give you on this call and go do it yourself if you think that's something you could do. Or option B, if you really like the person you're talking to and you like what we're about, you can discuss with them what that would look like moving forward. Does that sound fair enough? That's essentially how we want to be booking people in, right? We don't want to be tricking people and telling them it's not a sales call and then booking them in for a sales call, right? Because that's going to tarnish the image of your brand that you're working for. It's also going to make the customer feel like, that they're not, I guess, looked after from you, that they're getting scammed. It's going to put red flags into their brain, right? But by far, one of the most important things you can do is control your voice and your tone, right? Too many people, and I've listened to freaking thousands of calls, right? Too many people are just using the same tone throughout the entire call. You got to be able to use a bit of a confused tone when you're talking to people and you're trying to understand the situation. And then, oh my gosh, you got to get that concern tone when you're hearing about them and you know the problems that they've been going through and how bad that could be looking like in the future, right? You got to be mixing up your tone. If you're just going one tone the whole call, you're not really having much impact because it goes back to the cliche saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? And it's never been more important in appointment setting than I would say 2025/2026, due to the fact that there's so many people doing it nowadays. There's so many AIs out there. All people are really wanting is just a one-to-one human conversation that they can have a connection with, right? The only way you build connection with people is through using the power of your voice and your tone, right? So what you want to be doing is you want to be matching your tone. So when prospects become formal, simplify your language and warm the tone. Connection beats intelligence, right? You could be the most intelligent person on the phone, but if you don't get along with that person, they're probably not going to do anything with you, right? You got to have that connection, build that rapport, get that trust from them, right? And that all adds into the urgency. That all adds into the certainty that gets them to book and show up to those appointments. So ethical urgency must be real, right? It can't be bullshit. It must be real. You can make it sound real with your voice, but you've also got to genuinely believe it yourself as well, right? It's got to be relevant. It's got to be relevant to what they're talking about. This is why you want to have a conversation and not just tick boxes by asking questions, right? You want to get to know them on a deeper level. So that way they can get more context to the situation and actually address their problems correctly, right? They want to focus on consequences of waiting. So, I mean, what do you think would happen if you didn't do anything about this for another 6 or 12 months? Or, I mean, you've already been sitting on the fence for at least like the last 2 years, you mentioned to me. What would happen if you delay this for another 2 years? Right? It's all about your voice, your tone, the questions that you're asking, right? You're only a couple of really, really good questions away from booking in highly qualified, certain leads that will actually show up to appointments. So basically, all you literally have to do, right, is build rapport, identify what motivates them, clarify their problem clearly, remove any confusion that they have, address hesitation, right? But warning, if you're booking too early leads, like let me think about it, you're going to be getting no-shows and very low level intent, right? So if you're booking people that are still like, yeah, I'm keen to chat, but I'm going to need to think about it and see whether or not it is the right solution for me, you need to dig deeper on that call before you book them in, because that's going to result into a no-show. And that's essentially it, guys. This is one of the many documents that we actually have inside of my company at Speed to Lead that we train appointment setters on. So if you guys are wanting to join a community where you can learn appointment setting and actually start to network and be around people who are starting to crush it in the appointment setting industry, I've got a link to my community in the YouTube description below. So make sure you click that and join it and say hi when you join the community. All right, thanks for your time, guys. Bye.